Hi everybody, Steve from Steve's Makerspace, and today we are back in Gamecraft. This is part 2 of getting started in Gamecraft. Last time we went over the really basic stuff to get started, copy paste, how to place blocks, how to make a basic car. Today we're going to get into all the other basic features that I didn't cover in the first video. So if you didn't see that first video, go take a look. Otherwise, let's get started. So we're going to be in my Getting Started Basics tutorial land. This is available in the prefabs. So first I want to talk about physics blocks. These are good for moving things around. You've got the mover and the rotator, movement dampener, and the rotation dampener. So here are two movers connected to these blocks. Let me just hit E and you'll see them move. And one of them is going straight off into that direction. And the one that's going straight off in one direction has the axis reference at time start, whereas this one has the axis reference at local. So the difference is if this gets turned, it continues pushing in the turned direction rather than going in this coordinate direction. So this one, when you hit E, it continues going in that direction, and this one does not. So here we'll watch them again, and you'll see the difference between those two. This can be pointed upwards to provide lift, so you can make a flying object. The rotator rotates. You can change the direction, make it go reverse or normal, and you can change the axis reference just like you did with that one. So this one is set to local, and this one is set to time start. So let's see the difference between those two. So you see this one continues to try going in that direction, whereas this one continues rotating even though it got turned on its side. These don't have any power to them, so they're going to be fully on. If you power them, if you put a switch connected to this, then it will only go on when you turn on the switch. And if you were to connect this to a dial, then you could control how much it's going to go. You can also make this go faster if you put a second mover on here. So now it's going even faster than it was before. These are called triggers, and this is a character on stay trigger, which means that as long as the character is in this area, it's going to stay on. And this is connected to that piston, so I'll turn the simulation on and then walk in here and you see the piston goes off, and I walk out and the piston goes off. Placing one of these is similar to placing a block. You do like this and then go up, and now this is the trigger area. This is an on-stay object trigger instead of a character trigger. I can push this block into the trigger area and the piston goes on. I push it out of the trigger area and the piston goes off. This is a command computer, and if we look in here and type in help, these are all the different commands available to you. So we can set the sky color, we can set camera zoom distance from the character. For instance, we could set the character's run speed, set character run speed, and I think 3 is about normal, but if I make this 8 and then hit done, and then this doesn't affect run speed in build mode, but if I hit E, now you can see I'm moving a lot faster. Now if this is unpowered, this is just going to come on automatically, but you can connect it to a button or a switch if you want to change something. So here I've got these changing the light, like so. Oof, that's really bright. And you can also connect a trigger to a command block. So this one, walking on the left, will teleport the player up and forwards. So let's do that, and you can see I just got teleported. And I'll come back over here, and I teleported again. And there's two types of teleportation. You can teleport the character relative or absolute. Absolute goes to a certain coordinates, X, Y, Z, and relative means that it's relative to where the character is now. It's gonna, if you say 10, it's gonna move it 10 forward. You can set the gravity. That's really nice. Negative 9.8 is standard. So if you set the gravity to 9.8 positive, then when you hit E, you're gonna move up to the sky really fast. Change text block command is pretty cool. So if you look at this, I haven't talked about text blocks yet. So text block, This one has a number, text block 16, and here you can just type in some text, and that's going to appear on the text block. But in this command computer, I've got change text block 16 space, and then some information, and this says color red yo. And so if I go into test mode and press this, it changes this to a red yo. There's also a rich text formatting, which I'm going to leave a link to this rich text formatting site where you can get information about how to affect the text. For instance, this has line breaking, and this does not have line breaking, and this has some vertical text offset to it. And you can also, of course, come into this world and see what this text block looks like. So here's the text to make this happen. These are math blocks that are available, and they work pretty much how you would expect them to. If we look at this, the second input is going to be subtracted from the first input, right? So 1 minus 1 is 0, but if I don't subtract 1, then I get something less than, more than 0, less than 1. The sign one reverses the sign of whatever is going in, so if you have a -4 going in, a +4 will come out. And then we have logic blocks, and, or, not, and some other ones that are a little harder to explain, but and just means if both of these are true, then this will be true, or is if either of these is true, then this is true. Not is reversing, so if this is not true, then this is going to be true, and if this is true, then this is going to be not true. These are the most common logic blocks that you'll be using in your builds. The XOR gate is also useful for making a door that can be opened on both sides. So here I can go through and close the door on each side, and so both of these switches are wired to the XOR gate, and then the XOR goes to the door. This is called a number to text block, and it converts numbers that are coming into it to a text that is going out to a text block. So I can increase this and decrease, and you can see I'm getting a reading on what is in here. So that's a pretty simple wiring up. You can change the decimals that are showing, or the total number of digits that you want to show on the text block. Also, if you want a number here and no label, you just have to delete whatever text is in here, so there's no label. This is a basic bit. It's got a 1, 0, and a toggle, and then the current state goes out from here. So I'll just show you set, reset, toggle back and forth. So that's useful in logic builds. The timer works about how you would expect. There's a start, stop, and a reset input, and then ended, progress, and text output. There's also this, which is where you can set what time you want and whether you want to show milliseconds or not. So here I can hit start, and the timer is going, and this is being output as the time. We'll reset that, and I still have it at start, so I need to maybe pause it and then reset. And the ended is basically sending a +1 out when we get to the 2, whenever we get to this target time. So here, if you pay attention to that, we'll start, it gets to the 2, and then you get a 1 output. This progress is basically a percentage of completion. How close are we to the 2-second mark? So if I start it and then pause it at 1:45, then we're about 75% complete. This is a counter, and it has increment, decrement, and reset as the inputs. So it goes up maximum of 999, and it goes down to 0, and then the reset resets it. This is where you tell it a target number that you want and then when the target is reached, it has an output of 1. So let's say you're keeping score and somebody's got to reach 20 in order to win the game, and now they've won the game. The progress is again a percentage of completion, and the text is what is the number in the text block. So if I click on this, you can see there's a 6 coming out of here, and the percentage of completion target is 20, so if I go up to 10, we should be 50% complete. And then this is just a way of converting this 0.5 into 50% using some math. There is no actual number coming out of here, there's just this progress, but you can convert this to a number by basically multiplying the progress by the target number in order to get a number. So say we had 10 in the counter, by doing some math we can get 10 in this multiplication block. So we'll do that, and you can see there's a 10 coming out of this multiplication block. Here is combining a bit and a timer in order to toggle something on for a short time and then go off. So show you that, it goes on, it goes off. Alright, so what's happening here? So the button goes to the 1 of the bit, the state goes to the timer to start the timer. When the timer ends, it goes ended, goes to reset, goes to stop, and also goes to the 0 of the bit. And then the current state of the bit is also going to the piston. So let's take a look now at this hovercraft. So this hovercraft is made with the rotator blocks. These, I didn't talk about these. These are the dampeners, and this is good to put on a hovercraft to stop wobbling. This hovercraft has a bit here that's for toggling hover mode on and off, and this is coming from the crouch button on the seat. Here's the rotator block that's for rotating the craft left and right. This movement dampener is for making sure that the hovercraft slows down and it doesn't just go forward forever. This command block is setting the zoom distance when you get into the seat. So this is connected to the seat button on the seat. So let's get in, and I'll hit Control to get into hover mode, and we'll hit W to go forwards, S, A, W. So that's my hovercraft. All of these physics blocks are working on the center of mass of the object that it's attached to. So this rotation is not rotating around this point. It's rotating around whatever the point is in the middle of the seat. But if you break this with a joint, so here we have joints here. These are joints are engines, pistons, hinges, those are joints. And since this is separated, this movement block is working on the center of mass of this rather than this. So each of these legs has its own center of mass. And of course we have these on object stay triggers that are connected to the mover blocks. This hovercraft is the same as that hovercraft, but with a difference in that this joint isn't actually separating this, because I've joined this together, so now there's no separation. So if I get into this hovercraft, let's say it seems like it works really well, but let's bump into something. So I bumped into something, and you can see it's not exactly recovering like the other hovercraft. That's because all 4 of these legs are not acting independently. So if I bump this into something and I can back up, you see it recovers because all the 4 legs are all acting independently. I forgot to mention something about copy-paste last time. So when you copy something, the wiring, you see this is wired to this button. If I copy this, Control C, and paste it over here, it takes the wiring and copies it so it's already wired up, which can be helpful and sometimes it can be annoying, but that's how it works. The other thing is that you can copy a single block by doing a middle mouse click. On my mouse, that's the mouse wheel. If I press on it, I've copied this and I can press left click to paste it. And so that works the same way. A nice thing about that middle mouse click is I can copy this sign and say I want this sign to be bigger. I can do something like this, and now the sign is bigger and it's copied all the text for me. This is a simple player spawn for a game, and then this is a spawn area for a player if you want them to build something before they start the game. Say they're building a car and then they're using that car in order to complete an obstacle course. These are HUD blocks that are useful for making games. So let me just turn these on and you'll see them appear. This is where the center HUD text goes, and then at the top you've got Game Stats HUD, and at the bottom right you've got Objective 1. So that information is coming from these three blocks. So we'll go into here and you can see this is where center HUD text goes, and this is how long that is going to show up. If you don't wire this to anything, this will just appear on the screen as soon as somebody hits E. Here's an objective HUD, and you can wire this up. So one thing you could do is connect this to a trigger, and so if the player, say, gets into a trigger area, then they've completed an objective, and then you could connect this to, say, an AND gate, and if the player gets all three objectives in a game, then those combine and the player can win the game. This is a Game Stats HUD. This could be connected to a timer to show how much time you have in the game. It could be connected to a counter to show what the score is in the game. This T is where you could input information from a timer or a counter. So I've got an example of a simple game on the prefab workshop. It's called Example Game, and it's called Block Placer is the name of the game. And I've got some notes like this that show how I put together that game. So you might take a look at that on the prefab. This is an object ID, and this is an object identifier, and this is connected to an object on stay filter, like so. So if I push this, which doesn't have the object ID, into here, nothing happens. But if I push this in, the piston goes off. So this thing determines whether this object got into this area. There's also for multiplayer, which multiplayer is really wonky right now. I wouldn't recommend it at the moment. Maybe if you're watching this after April of 2020, multiplayer might be better. But in multiplayer, this is a player identifier, which is connected to this button. So I'm player 1, and if I press this button, this goes off. This one is identifying player 2. If I press this button, nothing happens because I'm not player 2. But if player 2 pressed this button, then this would go off, and this one would not go off. And you could also connect this to a trigger area so you could determine whether player 1 or player 2 entered the trigger area. Also, if you want to publish what you've created, you can either select game, and then that'll go into the game section where people can play the game, but they can't get into build mode with that. And it won't be in the prefab area where people can copy that into their own build and use it. If you want it in prefab, that's all of these other categories are prefab. And after you publish it, it'll take about 15 minutes for it to show up in the games or the prefabs. Okay, so I think I covered everything that I had left to share. That gives you the basics, a good foundation, this last video and this video combined, to be able to do a whole bunch of things in Gamecraft. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, give me a like. consider subscribing to my channel and ring that bell, because I don't have a ton of subscribers and you won't know that I produced a video unless you get notification. Consider joining my Discord and also join the Gamecraft Discord. The players are very helpful, the devs are very responsive. I'll leave a link in the description of the video. And of course this world is available in the prefabs if you want to take a look at it. It's called Getting Started. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.
Steve's Makerspace.